Welcome to today's health video. I'm your host, Labron, the founder of the Natural Health Clinic, and today we're going to be discussing 9 facts. That's 10 minus 1 because I didn't like the one fact. 9 facts about fluoride. So stay tuned. We'll get into those facts right after this. Welcome back. Slight technical difficulties there. So before I get into the 9 facts about fluoride, realize that this information that I'm conveying to you is completely for educational purposes. It is not intended to treat, cure, diagnose any types of disease, and if you have any medical condition, you should rush out immediately and see your nearest medical physician about that potential. So, the way that, especially in this country, the use of fluoride and fluoridated water is marketed is that it is extremely beneficial, even almost like a nutrient, and that it really protects your teeth and it's the best thing since sliced bread. But is that really true? Well, let's take the first fluoride fact as an example, and that simply is this. 97% of Western European countries actually reject the use of fluoridated water. Now, isn't that an interesting factoid? In fact, the amount of individuals in the United States alone who drink fluoridated water actually comprises the majority of the use of fluoridation in the entire globe. So basically, the United States and Americans are just completely inundated with fluoride, not only through municipal water sources, but even babies, oftentimes parents, thinking it's the best for their child, use fluoridated water for things such as baby formulas, etc. But it doesn't stop there. Realize that any type of beverage, any type of food that is processed, so processed foods and beverages, if they use sources that have fluoridation within the water, then you are also getting fluoride in those sources as well. So it doesn't just stop in municipal or city water sources. Now, if it is also true what we continuously hear, that fluoride really does help with tooth decay, then it would stand to reason that the countries who do have fluoridated water would obviously have less tooth decay than the countries who do not. The level of tooth decay is the same in all the countries, regardless if it is fluoridated or an unfluoridated country. So that completely blows the theory out of the water that fluoride really goes to a large extent in helping with tooth decay. Actually, what may is overall health. So what's also found is that fluoride doesn't only affect the teeth or the tooth enamel. In fact, there are several studies now that are showing that fluoride affects many different types of tissues within the body. And what are those? Well, number one, it can be bones, especially in males or in men, boys. It can affect the endocrine system. In fact, it is now called an endocrine disruptor. So therefore, it affects primarily the thyroid, the pineal gland. It's been shown to affect brain tissue as well. And we'll go into more of that in just a moment as far as additional factoids. So the point is that fluoride can affect many different tissues in the body when it is taken in orally, which through fluoridated water, that's typically how it's done, rather than only just the teeth. And unfortunately, the effects on those other tissues, such as the bones and the thyroid and the brain, are quite detrimental. At least they can be. Now, the other argument that is used by the quote-unquote experts frequently is that fluoridation is natural. In fact, it was from nature that we got the idea of fluoride. and that there is fluoridation within natural water sources. Well, unfortunately, if you think about it, just because there is some form of toxin within a natural water source doesn't mean that it's natural. Such as, what about runoff from chemical manufacturing facilities that ends up in water sources? So that's a natural water source, and it has high levels of certain toxins. Does that now mean that these chemicals from the manufacturing facilities is now a natural substance? Well, obviously not. Now, when you look at truly natural sources, and I'm referring to water sources, of fluoride, what you're going to find is that natural sources of fluoride in the water is about 0.1 parts per million. Now, when you compare that to the amount of fluoridation within municipal or city water sources, you're going to find that it's from 0.7 to 1.2 parts per million. Now, that is many, many, many times higher than anywhere that you're going to find in a truly natural water source. So obviously, fluoridation, at least to the levels that is in many municipal water supplies, is not natural in any stretch of the imagination. Now that leads me to a question that many people either ask or have in the back of their mind is, well, where is the source? Where do they get the type of fluoride that ends up in our city water? Where does that come from? And actually what it comes from is a corrosive acid from the manufacturing of phosphate pesticides and fertilizers. So you heard that correct. Through the manufacture of phosphate fertilizers like glyphosate, Roundup, through that manufacturing process it creates this toxic, corrosive form of fluorosilicic acid, and that is what is put into city water sources. So that also, obviously, is not in any stretch of the imagination a type of natural source. Now, another factoid that's quite interesting is that approximately 40% of U.S. teens have now been found to have the detrimental effects of fluoride overdose, of fluoride overexposure, in plain words. And that is because, in part, of a reason that I mentioned earlier, as far as fluoride doesn't only appear in your city water. It also appears in any type of processed food, any type of processed beverages in which the water that's utilized in that product is fluoridated. It takes special filtration to remove the fluoride, and oftentimes that special filtration is not used in the manufacturing process, and because of that it is contained within those products, and so you're getting a dose from that as well, and you're especially getting even more of a dose if you do not filter your city water before drinking it. Now it's interesting, according to, it's either the FDA or the CDC, I forget which agency it is, but the recommendation now is that babies should only get at most 10 micrograms of fluoride a day. Now why that's significant is that many of the fluoridated waters that are recommended to be used for formula, and sometimes even formula itself, may contain fluoride substances. It's many, up to hundreds of times higher per day as far as the allotment that they would get in the either fluoridated water or the baby formulas, or both, than is even recommended by, again, either the FDA or CDC. Now in areas, this is factoid number 7, in many areas in which the water is not fluoridated, there is a quote-unquote fluoride supplement. Now what's interesting about this, that's available for individuals to take, what's interesting about this is a few things. One is that this fluoride supplement has never been approved by the FDA. Now why that is of any concern at all, because if you think about supplements in general, they aren't approved by the FDA either. But why this is important is that because of the toxic nature of fluoride, These fluoride supplements are only available through prescription from a medical doctor. And so you have this toxic substance that is not approved, or it's unapproved by the FDA, because when it has been tried to be approved through different companies, basically the FDA has rejected its approval. So it's unapproved by the FDA. It can only be given by prescription. That should really make people think. It certainly does me. I hope it does you. Now this, fact number 8, is also quite significant. They all are, but this really is. So in the beginning, in the 1950s, when they started putting fluoride into water sources, scientifically, and we know we should always follow the science, and science never changes, right? Because it's science. So the thinking is that you get the majority of the benefit from fluoride as far as tooth decay when it is ingested. Well, science, leaping decades forward, found out that that is completely inaccurate. And the main effect as far as prevention of tooth decay is when the fluoride is topical. If you think about it, when you go to your dentist, they give you fluoride to swish around your mouth. Well, what do? They say, well, just gulp that down because it's good for you. No, they tell you to spit it out. Don't swallow, spit it out. That's because it's highly toxic. So let's think about this. 70 years, 2020, 70 years ago, they thought it was good to ingest. They found out that, well, that's not only not true, but it's actually quite harmful to many different substances. You should only use it topically. That's actually how you get the best benefit from fluoride as far as tooth decay. But hey, let's go ahead and keep it in the municipal water because it still helps your teeth. It really doesn't make sense, does it? So that brings us to factoid number 9. And that is that, unfortunately, the individuals that are most affected from the effects of fluoride are the individuals who live in disadvantaged areas or disadvantaged neighborhoods. And the reason is that, as it makes sense, individuals who already have poorer health because of diet, or maybe even a lack of being able to get the amount of food that they need, maybe less hygienic conditions, whatever the situation, individuals that have poorer health have far greater of a detrimental effects from the ingestion of fluoride than even individuals who have better health, or let's say good health. So it really doesn't make any sense that the areas in which we would think we'd be trying to really help are actually more affected in a very detrimental fashion from this toxic substance than, areas of better advantage, so to speak. So when you look at all these different facts, none of it makes any sense. And it should at least create a question within your mind if you should avoid fluoride. And I can tell you that I personally, and my family does, we work any way that you can think of to avoid fluoride. We filter our municipal water using special filtration units in order to filter that fluoride. We make sure to use as much as possible organic sources of beverages or foods, whatever that may be, limit our exposure in that way. And especially toothpastes, we do not use any that contain fluoride. In fact, in the clinic, we carry a very specific form of toothpaste. That's because that's the type that myself and my family use. And not only does it not contain fluoride, but it actually looks at the mouth as a very similar environment as the gut. So what I mean by that is that you may know that the gut is a microbiome. That means it has different kinds of organisms that not only help with your digestion, that also help to manufacture certain nutrients, but also to safeguard your health through immune activity. Well, the mouth, your oral cavity, has a very similar environment. Now, we don't think about that. And that is oftentimes the beginning stage of the lower microbiome being affected, is that we're doing all kinds of things up here that destroy this environment, and as it travels on down, tends to destroy the gut environment as well. So the toothpastes that myself and my family utilize actually help to condition, to improve, and to create a flourishment within the different microorganisms that are healthy and beneficial for oral health. That's what we use. So point being is, it really is conducive to your health long term to think about how to limit the exposure from fluoride sources. So I have a favor. If you found this information helpful, then I really ask, please, to support us by liking it, and especially by sharing the content of this video with others. Our capability of getting this information out and disseminating it is very limited through shadow banning. You know, we have over 5,000 followers, almost 5,500 followers on our page, and yet even with videos we get very few views. I mean, it's like, you know, a couple hundred views. That is ridiculous. I mean, you would think that it would be at least a quarter of that, right? And probably even more. And so that's not even, is that even, I mean, 100 views is what? 10% would be 500, 5,300, so it's virtually nothing. So the way that we can get this information out is only through you, and so I very much appreciate if you do support us by liking it, because that helps the algorithms as well, but especially sharing it if you found it helpful. Also, if you're interested in improving your health to the best of your ability, then I invite you to contact us for an initial consultation. And the entire point of initial consultation is to identify where your nutritional deficiencies are, any issues that might be causing, and then see if we can create a plan, if we're a proper fit and working together, that will help you attain your health goals. So I will leave links that you can actually book online for an initial consultation, or you can always call the office using the information provided as well. So thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I am Labron, the founder of the Natural Health Clinic, and you have a great day.